Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and Blizza Kazoo, Blizza come on. Turns out we have a podcast to record.
Oh, you could have totally killed it in a production of this somehow, this movie that we're talking about, if it became a stage production, but it didn't. But it should, just so you can star in it, I think. That's what should happen.
Ramaladang, Ramaladee. Let's find out about the 5,000 fingers of Dr. T.
Now you're doing some sort of New York Jewish lady in there, I think, as well. But it's working.
It did get very Jewish.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So.
Wouldn't have been worse than the interpretation of the villain in this.
Oh, well, we're going to have some disagreement here coming up. But what's going on here in this season of Awesome Movie Year? We're talking about the films of 1953. And in this episode, we are talking about the year's big flop, and that is the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, the one and only live-action big screen effort from Dr. Seuss, which was such a failure that he swore off working in the movies for the rest of his life. And, what other mark of a failure? That's a pretty big mark of failure right there, I think.
Yeah, and obviously he never went on to do anything of note, so
well,
take that, Geisel.
Yeah, I mean, not in the movies, certainly, or at least not until after he died, and then they started making movies based on his books. But in his lifetime, he did.
He had already won 2 Oscars, one for Best Short Film and one for animating a documentary, right?
Yeah, the short film Gerald McBoing Boing, which was the Oscar winner for Best Animated Short Film in, I think it was 1950. And the success of that kind of led to the green light for this film, I think. So yeah, he'd had a promising start, but then he was like, nope, done, over, not happening anymore.
But we all knew from our childhood, like the iconic, you're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Yes.
It's not like beyond the books, it's not like he didn't have a presence in our world of pop culture.
Oh, absolutely. He had all of those TV specials, which were very successful. And I would imagine maybe he had a greater level of control over those that he felt like he didn't have here. But certainly nothing live action until long after he died. And this was why. And it did not do well. We're calling it a flop. And I'm trusting Wikipedia and other citations that it did poorly at the box office. I don't know the exact number, though. Supposedly, the budget was $2.75 million, which is a pretty decent sized budget for a movie from 1953. And so probably it had to make a decent amount of money in order to succeed. And it did not. Supposedly, there were walkouts at test screenings. It was very heavily re-edited after early screenings. There were 9 musical numbers out of the original 20 that were cut from this and that no longer exist. As far as I could tell, they're not even available as deleted scenes or anything like that. The music is available on the soundtrack, but the actual footage is no longer there. So it was already kind of hobbled by the time it reached a wide audience.
Yeah, it does not have the magic of many Dr. Seuss projects, Josh.
Not quite, although I think it has some magic. I have this feeling that Jason is going to trash this up and down. And many people agreed at the time. I think this is a movie that we could have maybe even put in our cult classic section for this season, because it has certainly gained a bigger, better reputation over time. And there are people who really like it. And I feel like you read about some of these things that were cut off early in the process, whether that was these musical numbers that were actually shot and that were cut out, or whatever script that Dr. Seuss originally came up with, supposedly 1,200 pages he wrote for this script initially. And obviously no one wants to see the 1,200-page version, but surely there were a lot of other strange, interesting detours that probably had to get cut out by Hollywood producers in order to make this into a family-friendly mainstream film, which is what they would have wanted.
Well, Josh, so to go back, it was re-released in 1958 with more cuts under the title Crazy Music, right? So they did give it another try and it failed there. And as for this 1,200-page script, it was like page 3, Zimmy Limmy Flap, page 4, Bibby Dibby Dap, you know, so of course it's 1,200 pages, the Dr. Seuss script. So
Yeah, that's just a very effective impersonation of Dr. Seuss there. And also, I feel like cutting more out of this movie is not the way to make it better. Like, it doesn't surprise me that a re-release in 1958 didn't succeed when they made it shorter. Like, it's already feels like it's been hacked up in a lot of ways, I feel like.
it, like I said, it doesn't seem to have any of the whimsy that we come to appreciate with Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, I think it has enough of it. It not, I mean, maybe not enough, but a sufficient amount that it's mildly amusing from my perspective. And just the fact that in 1953, they aimed to translate the style of Dr. Seuss to live action, which is something they didn't work on again until so much late, nearly 50 years later, with all the different advances in special effects. And you know, I think they do what they can with it here with set design and costumes and stuff.
Well, I think you're a sucker, Josh. You're just going to keep pushing everything on us from 1953 as this landmark year to tell us why it's so good because you want us to keep doing these old seasons. And if they all suck, Josh, it's all going to be 2015 on from now on. Awesome movie year, the current year.
Listen to our most recent episode, one episode ago, when we all agreed the movie from 1953 was good.
And probably the next one too.
Yeah, but for now, I mean, I don't 100% disagree with you. This is not a great movie, and I mean, jumping ahead, the first time I saw this movie a few years ago, I was like, wow, what a cool, weird Dr. Seuss cult classic. That's got to be amazing. And I was really underwhelmed with it. And this time, I think with lower expectations, I had a little more fun with it. But I'm not going to argue that it's a great movie or that it's a brilliant lost classic or anything like that. I think it's an unrealized opportunity to make this kind of thing out of Dr. Seuss that they probably just didn't have the resources for at the time.
And it should be noted, Stanley Kramer, legendary director and producer, produced this film and supposedly directed a good bunch of it without, you know, having it under his name. And it's interesting that you have such mega forces here and that it just didn't come together.
Right. I mean, we know Dr. Seuss is this towering figure of children's books, but by 1953, he was still like a huge deal. Yeah. So you're right. There are these big figures. This was something that had a lot of expectations, and that may have been part of the problem, that there were too many conflicting ideas of what it should be. So it did get an Oscar nomination for Best Original Score. And I think the music is some of the best stuff that's going on here. Dr. Seuss also did write the song lyrics. So that's a deserved nomination, I think.
I agree. I like the music.
Yeah.
I don't know why they cut 9 of those. And it had some catchy tunes. I think the whole thing could have been a musical and I'd have been fine with it.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like there's long stretches where I was like, couldn't we get another song in here? I guess we could have, but we didn't. So critics at the time were seemingly mixed on it. Our buddy Bosley Crowther in the New York Times was not a fan.
By the way, Bosley Crowther sounds like a Dr. Seuss villain.
He does, and he could have been, because he has a very negative take on this film. He says, "This strange and confused fabrication of the dreams of a 10-year-old boy who is staging a psychic rebellion against his male piano teacher's tyranny is not only abstruse in its symbols and in its vast elaboration of reveries, but also dismally lacking in the humor or the enchantment such an item should contain. There is plenty of fancy image making along the line of current comic strips, and plenty of loose suggestion of wishful thinking along the line of Freud. Granting the good intentions of Dr. Seuss and co-writer Alan Scott, the consequence of their effort is a ponderously literate affair, pictorially potential, but devoid of sense or suspense."
You know, in my lifetime, Josh, I don't often want to agree with Bosley Crowther over Dr. Seuss,
Right.
but we've come to that point in the road here, haven't we?
I think we have. Yeah, it seems like he's on your wavelength on this one.
Well, I agree. There was a lot of just missteps, missed potential, as you said, and just misses here.
Yeah. I mean, missed potential, I think, but there's still some slight hits, I guess. So other critics were less negative, or actually quite positive, although it seems like they were maybe applying lower standards. I don't. Roy Ringer in the LA Daily News said, Columbia Pictures and Stanley Kramer can be proud of his production of The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, a highly original musical that successfully defies the Hollywood formula. A work of pure imagination, this Technicolor fantasy hasn't a single major star in its cast, and for this reason may suffer at the box office. But our advice is that you treat the entire family to Dr. T. If the picture is lacking in celebrities, it has full measure of whimsy and charm and surprise.
No whimsy, no charm, no surprise. Moving on.
Were you not surprised by anything in this movie just because it was kind of weird?
I wasn't surprised at all. The only thing I was surprised about, which I found to be a negative, was that the villain had nothing redeeming going for him. In that, like, if you look at something like the reason the Grinch is so successful, right, is because he comes around. This villain is just a knob job all the way through, and nothing else comes of it.
I guess, I mean, you could argue that, I mean, the idea here is that this is all sort of a dream of this little boy, Bart, who hates taking piano lessons, and he casts his piano teacher as this horrible villain. So, I mean, you could say that this isn't even really like a person who would have some sort of character arc or whatever. He's just the projection of this kid's idea of this supposedly tyrannical teacher.
I mean, in the same way that the Grinch sees the magic of Christmas, didn't you want the villain here to see the magic of other instruments? Oh, now I hear the trumpet come in and the drums and the violin, and they all sound so good together with the piano. Why, yes, a symphony is exactly what this town needs.
See, but that's not what the kid wants anyway. The kid doesn't give a shit about any instruments. He just wants to go outside and play stickball or something.
I mean, the kid calls the plumber who he's met like 3 times in his life dad. He's got other problems going around. Hey, Pop, you mean me? Yeah, Pop, you're my dad, right? I fixed your pipes once. Okay, Pop, I'll show you my homework when it's done. Like, what?
He wants to go fishing. He needs a male role model in his life. This kid is adrift, and we are seeing his...
You need a male role model in your life.
Oh, yeah. Are you volunteering for that one?
I don't think that would end up well. Yeah. That probably wouldn't be the best choice, John.
No, I mean, this is the whole movie is, and we're talking about like the Freudian aspects of it as mentioned in this review. Like, I would imagine that original draft probably has a lot more psychological probing of this character. And that's what we're essentially getting is a glimpse into this messed up 10-year-old kid's psyche.
You're saying that they cut all the stuff where Bart wants to fuck his mom?
Bart clearly wants to fuck his mom using the plumber as a proxy. Come on.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, do you think your dad's available to be Josh's male role model?
Another bad choice. Lots of bad choices for Josh.
I'm a lost cause here, Jason. I think it's over for me already.
Well, maybe if Rich and you, it's like what they say, like two
wrongs make a right.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm going with it. So like if you see how low you can descend, maybe you'll turn the corner real fast.
All right. Well, let's move on to another review. Another person who disagrees with you, Jason. Jay Carmody in the Washington Evening Star said, people who've been clamoring for a, quote, different movie will find it starting today. It is called The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, and its producer is Stanley Kramer. Kramer may be the only movie maker alive who would venture to see film material in the writing and drawing of Dr. Seuss, but this is what he has done in this film. What he has pounced upon with his taste for the unusual is a satirical musical comedy fantasy. It is wonderful in the moments when it comes off, at least different in those passages when it lapses into bumbling. The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T represents the imagination running riot, and as everybody knows, riots invariably get somewhat out of hand. This one is no exception to that rule, despite its numerous other exceptional aspects.
What are those aspects?
The charm and the whimsy, etc. I don't know.
Those are all missing, though.
I mean, he thinks it's obviously this guy doesn't agree. He thinks it's satirical and fantastical, and that's. I think that stuff is. You may think it doesn't work for you, but you can't say they're not at least presenting you with something whimsical.
I found so little whimsy in here, Josh.
You're the Grinch this time. I'm usually the Grinch, but now you're the Grinch.
I'll take it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I assume you never saw this one before then.
No, I had never seen it, but how fascinating does it sound? The only movie Dr. Seuss ever wrote, the musical. It's set in this phantasmagorical world of imagination. Sounds like it should all work. Stanley Kramer, coming off of Inherit the Wind,
Yeah,
Judgment at Nuremberg, clearly the man for this job.
yeah, that's when you.
Although in his defense, I mean, Stanley Kramer, it's a bad, 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 bad world. He can do this type of stuff.
True, he's versatile. Yeah, and we should say Roy Rowland is the actual credited director here. Although, as you pointed out, supposedly Stanley Kramer ghost directed some of it. So yeah, as I said, I did see it a few years ago. Was not as hard on it as you are then, but was a little underwhelmed. I think this time I was a bit more forgiving and found some charming aspects to it. But I don't love it. It's not a great movie. It's an interesting failure. I agree with you there. So
was this one you just like had heard about, or
yeah,
I mean, because it's a very random kind of film to pick.
Yeah, I don't know why exactly. I mean, it was just something that was in my good old Netflix DVD queue that popped up one time because I mean, it's a known as a kind of a cult oddity, and of course, Dr. Seuss is still super famous, and his involvement in it is known. And I don't know, it just intrigued me for whatever reason, and it was in a list of all these movies that I was trying to check out.
Yeah, Josh, you did bring up one thing about how many reviews didn't like it. It failed, but like it does have that reassessment that we always have been talking about on so many movies, where it's got a really big following.
Yeah, and I think that would have been the reason that nowadays it has a much more positive reputation, even though Seuss never, like all the way until his death, I think was down on it and said negative things about it and left it out of his autobiography or whatever. But now, if you look at like Letterboxd or whatever, there's a lot of positive reviews. And I think people have certainly reevaluated this in a more positive light. So that's probably one of the reasons that I was curious to check it out. And I'm not fully on board with that, but I can see some of it. So, Dave, had you ever watched this one?
I had never seen it. I'd never heard of it. And you could now count me as a member of that cult.
Oh, right. We're gonna have
I loved it.
We're going to have quite the battle here, maybe, between Dave and Jason.
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss called the film a debaculous fiasco.
What does he know?
I like that Dr. Seuss's insult of his own film is a Dr. Seussian phrase.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hollywood is not suited for me, and I am not suited for it, he once said.
Yeah. And I mean, that is not surprising, given I think that happens to a lot of people who are solo creators like this. He writes a book and he draws the pictures and he's in full control over it. And you come especially to a live action movie and suddenly there's all these other factors and all these other people involved and it's not the right venue for him probably. So is there anything else on the background of this film that you want to talk about, Jason?
Josh, you're a debaculous fiasco.
Man, you're just really, I just said a couple nice things about this film and you just jumping all over me.
Well, I'm just not a fan of this one, Josh, and it's put me in a mood where the only thing that might cheer me up is some green eggs and ham.
All right. Well, there's no green eggs and ham in this, but there are some elsewhere in Seuss. So I guess we'll come back then in a moment and talk more of our general thoughts on the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1953, we are talking about the flop of the year, the Dr. Seuss vision, the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, and Jason hated it. So why do you hate fun and children, Jason?
Oh, yeah, Josh. I'm the one on the podcast.
As I'm saying, our roles are reversed here in this episode.
Well, for one thing, as I said, I mean, dude, we're going to have to start a new category for 1953's giant scene eaters or something because, talk about Caligula in the robe, right? Well, our friend here, the bad guy played by Snaggletooth, right? Or Snagglepuss, is that who played him over here?
Snidely Whiplash. Yeah.
Snidely Whiplash played him. What was the actor's name
Hans,
there, Josh?
Hans Conried is the actor's name.
Yeah, he I get that he's treating it like a live action cartoon, but it just felt like there was no real emotion behind anything he said. He was just going so big for all of it for no reason. I found him to be quite annoying. I didn't think the performance worked. Meanwhile, the mom, who Bart wants to fuck. Like, I mean, if you're going to defend someone from wanting to fuck their mom, like, hopefully the mom's a little more interesting than she is, right? Right, Josh? You got to give me that one, right?
I mean, yeah, the mom character is a bit bland. I think I will say again that all of this is meant to be filtered through the perspective of this 10-year-old boy who is probably.
But if he wants to fuck her, then he would think that she'd be interesting.
I
right?
mean, I don't know that really the movie is intending to show you that. There's some subtext there, but most 10-year-old boys aren't interested in the interpersonal lives of their mothers, right? And so she's just a symbol, really, just like the plumber who he wishes would be his dad is kind of a symbol. And so is the piano teacher who he sees as some sort of obstacle to his fulfillment, being able to skip piano lessons. So, I mean, to me, like, yeah, the mom is bland, and maybe they could have given her more dimensions or just more active participation in the story rather than literally being locked in a cage. I'm with you there, and that performance is kind of whatever. But I'm going to 100% disagree with you on Hans Conried. I found him incredibly entertaining and like the best part of the movie. He is playing a live action cartoon because that is what this is. He's not playing a character who needs to have dimensions. He's a fantasy of what a kid thinks is a bad guy. He's having so much fun with it. It's the best thing in the whole movie.
I just needed to believe that he believed something he was doing, and I didn't believe any of that.
He believes in the power of the piano and the necessity of the Dr. Terwilliger Institute or whatever, and the 500 little boys that he has to kidnap to play the piano. Did he not seem like he had conviction in all that? He was very
a lot
adamant.
of conviction.
Imagine you were put on the stand and they're like, why'd you kidnap those 500 boys? And he was like, for piano.
I mean, it's ridiculous because it's supposed to be ridiculous. Like, this is.
I'm going to lock up the lady so me and these 500 boys can run free in my secret lair playing piano.
Yeah, there's a lot of Freudian subtext to this movie.
Yeah.
You know what this movie reminded me of is like, you know, when you're like, you're
True Detective season 1.
Like True Detective season 1. You know, when you're like kind of like jokingly like talking down to a kid, like got your nose kind of thing. Like the whole movie is that. It's like all just like kind of this kid is below all of the adults and they're all just kind of lording it over him, just how much he's stuck in the situation. And it's so ridiculous and cartoonish. I just loved all of that.
Yeah.
Hey there, sport. I can't be your dad. I got to go do a thing now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Jason, on those other adult characters, the mom and the plumber being
Mr.
Zabludowski. And
that's a great Dr. Seuss.
Right, he's always got great names, Dr. Terwilliger, all of this stuff.
Yeah, those are good names.
Yeah, totally. And Bartholomew Collins, who is maybe a little too similar to Bartholomew Cubbins from the However Many Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, which is another Dr. Seuss book. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the fact that those characters are kind of dull. And to me, that was why Dr. T stands out. Why Hans Conried is so fun to watch in this movie, because he's playing it up. He's having fun with it. Like that musical number where he gets dressed is so fun, is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not feeling any of that. I got to say, another thing that let me down, Josh, was, you know, we have the imagination of Dr. Seuss, which is so well realized on the page and so many things and in some of the other movies. But like this kind of lair that he has, this like secret hideaway is really boring looking. It's just like a cave with a slide and then a cage underneath or something like that. It's totally boring as a set.
I mean, I think they probably don't have the money to fully recreate a Dr. Seuss thing. Again, this is why there wasn't another live action Dr. Seuss movie for so long, not just because of his disinterest, but because really creating a full Dr. Seuss world requires CGI and just things that they didn't have at this time. So I don't
think it does require CGI, because the movie I keep thinking about of what it should be at its best is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the one from the 70s,
yeah.
Right? And you have the amazing villain who has layers to him. You have kids who have some depth to them. You have you have plenty of whimsy. You have some kind of snap to it. And then you have this, incredible sets and set pieces that we still remember to this day.
Well, yeah, that's a much better movie. I don't disagree. But I think the set design here, there's a lot of fun creativity to it. The giant ladder that goes to nowhere, all the Seussian, arrows and fingers pointing, the whole number with the other instruments, like you were talking about, that long dance number with the green screen people who are playing these crazy like instruments that get bigger and bigger and more elaborate. Like, that's great design.
Maybe I just checked out by them, Josh.
I love the piano, the big rolling piano for all the 500 kids to play.
Right. I mean, it's massive, and yeah, it has that kind of curve to it. And I mean, I agree there were some of the sets that did look a little sparse, where you wonder if they ran out of resources or they just couldn't fully decorate everything properly. Hey, it's not as good as Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But for that effort, like, again, this is for a movie where it's like there's potential that isn't fully realized, but it's sort of realized at times. And I think that that's the same thing with the design here.
I think I've just become such a catty bitch, Josh, that I find, like, we watch so many movies now, even if you go on my letterbox, go for Jason. Stuff that I might have used to give in like 2.5 stars because, like, I like the effort. They're now getting 1.5 stars because, you know what?
You don't like
Fuck
the
you,
effort.
Josh.
Fuck me? Is this for me particularly?
Well, I mean, I used you in the specific, but that was a generalization to fuck you to all the Joshes out there.
And all the filmmakers. I mean, I am with you in that, like, I am very stingy with my ratings if you look at my Letterboxd or at reviews that I write. And I think that I can get jaded too, certainly. And I've seen a lot of movies just like you have. But I feel like I'd rather see a movie like this, which I feel like is has a lot of ambition that it doesn't quite succeed at, than a movie that is just middle of the road and tolerable. Like, this movie was interesting to watch.
And I just don't think the ambition was there. I think it was cut out. Like, like when I talk about the set, I don't feel like that was imagined really well. I feel like, we cut 9 musical numbers so that and we both agreed the music was probably the best stuff here. Like, and then you get like, instead of that, you get a very lame fight scene between Zabludowski and, put up your dukes, and it just didn't work for me.
Well, that's fun. They're like trying to hypnotize each other with weird mesmerizing hand gestures. I mean, they're not just punching each other or something. There's some creativity to that. I mean, I'm with you on the musical numbers. I don't know what they were like, but it's a shame that those have completely disappeared and that they're not there, because they would have enhanced it. And certainly there are stretches of this where you're like, is this still a musical? When are we going to start singing again? And there could have been more of that.
Yeah. And a few more Oompa Loompas.
I don't think that the Oompa Loompas really fit here. I think that would have been a copyright infringement. I don't think that when was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory written? I don't think it existed, the book, at this point yet.
Look, so Josh, I think it's not good at all. You think it's all right and has missed potential, but Dave over here said he loved it. So what is it that you love, Dave?
Well, the thing is like it's a hard conversation to have, because a lot of the things that you think weren't there at all, Jason, I think were there. I think there's a lot of imagination on display. I think that this is just like pure nonsensical vision. And I think that's kind of what you want out of Dr. Seuss. And I think it is all there on the screen, and not everything works. And I agree with you guys, there should have been more music, and it's not perfect by a long shot, but I think that what is happening on screen is great. I think the villain is just so much fun. And, I just think it's such a ridiculous way to craft a kid's movie, essentially, is to have that kid just be so deranged and the whole thing kind of from his point of view. I mean, that's one of those more, for the adults kind of things. And I just really appreciated just how weird it is from that point of view.
Yeah, and the kid he's I don't know.
Troubled.
Yeah, he's troubled.
Yes,
He's kind of a wet blanket, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He's really, messing with people's joy here, I think, in some ways.
Yeah. And as a musician, like I should hate this kid because he hates music apparently, but I just think that's such a funny, weird, like, entry point to this story.
Yeah, and again, it's all from this sort of skewed perspective. Like, I do love one other thing, like at the end, the climax is he creates this device that will absorb the sound so that the music can't be played. And the big threat is like, oh, is it atomic? And of course, like it's a word that you get the sense that the kid doesn't even know what that word means, except that it means something is dangerous. And so, but of course, everyone in his fantasy conceives of that word the same way. And even the adults are like, oh no, it's atomic. We better run away from it. So I don't know. I thought there's kind of nuances to that from like the perspective of what kids think.
I thought it was lame, that whole little device to capture the sound.
You didn't like how they created it with all the stuff in the kid's pocket?
No. Where's the reason in that, Josh?
Where's the reason in that? The question you often want to ask Dr. Seuss.
I said that on purpose, clearly.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, none of it really worked
All
for
right.
me.
So did you watch this with your daughter?
No, Josh. I saved her the pain and suffering that you put me through.
Does she like Dr. Seuss?
Yeah, we all like Dr. Seuss, right? We've already mentioned that one, the Christmas, that one that saves Christmas, but
The Grinch.
the Grinch, that Grinchy
That
guy
guy steals Christmas first, and then someone else saves it.
Yeah, the Whoville kids.
Cindy Lou Who, right?
Yeah, and one fish, red fish, blue fish.
You're clearly a huge Dr. Seuss fan.
Yeah, the places we'll go.
That's a thing. But you've watched some of that stuff with your daughter.
Yeah, and I think like the last Dr. Seuss animated Grinch was successful. Like, I'm not going to go. I mean, like in the 2000s, you had all those missteps of like Mike Myers, Cat in the Hat, Jim Carrey, Grinch, and I wish we could get another really cool live action thing. But I think like, what the writing was probably what made the difference in the Ed Helms. Was it Ed Helms who was the Grinch in the last one?
It was Benedict Cumberbatch, but that was close.
Well, Josh, I just put them both in my pocket and then I put them in a device and Ed Helms came out.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Wasn't he in it?
Maybe he was in it. I don't know, but he wasn't the Grinch. And
who was he? The Lorax? Was he a Lorax?
No, I wasn't Danny DeVito the Lorax. I just want to clarify that you're saying the difference between what made the movies that were written by Hollywood screenwriters better than the movie that was written by Dr. Seuss was the writing.
You're going to tell me that this was a better written film than the last Grinch?
It wasn't a worse written film.
The Grinch who had Hanukkah.
The Grinch who had Hanukkah.
I don't know what you want from me, Josh.
I don't know. I don't know either, but I think we need to wrap up here because
Ed Helms, Hanukkah.
What is
he was the Lorax.
Live action.
Hanukkah?
Josh,
you're
all over the place.
We've now descended into Seussian absurdity here on this podcast. So.
Pretty much, yeah.
Should we rate this movie out of 5 nonsense
Ed
phrases?
Helms?
No, five not Seussian. One of your little phrases that you had prepared there.
5 Kuzagabals.
There you go. Let's do that.
You
How
go.
many would you rate it?
1.5.
Wow.
Kuzagabal.
This is one of your lowest ratings. Do you hate this more than I feel like 2 episodes ago you said this was the worst movie that we'd ever covered.
Oh yeah, The Robe is still worse than this.
Okay.
So.
All right. I'm glad.
But if we could combine them, and maybe Dr. T was trying to keep Jesus as a prisoner in this land, and they had to get him out with whimsy, then maybe we're onto something. I don't know.
That sounds great. Let's make that happen. So I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 flibbity bups or whatever.
Oh, that's ridiculous, Josh.
It's fine. It's cute. It's fun. It's not a full success, but it's worth checking out. Is my feeling.
Where's the Josh I know?
So yeah, I don't know. He's been kidnapped by Dr. Terwilliger, I guess. Dave you're about to hate Dave more, right? Dave, how would you rate this?
4 fliggity belums or whatever we're calling them. I'm going all the way up to 4.
That's not even a real thing. You're rating out of something that's not even real, Dave. Let's get serious here.
Yeah. I want to know, Dave,
right.
did this struck me while I was watching it. Did it affect your enjoyment of this film that Dr. T kind of looks like Michael Showalter?
Yes, absolutely.
You have a good
100%.
point, Josh, and that's another reason to call bullshit on this guy Dave over here. That's not a reason to enjoy a movie just because he looks like a director who peaked 5 years ago.
Oh God!
Harsh words for so.
He's directing all these women to Oscars. What are you talking about?
Who's he directed to in Oscar?
Jessica Chastain.
Jessica Chastain and
Oh yeah, she couldn't have done that on her own. It's only
No.
Jessica Chastain.
All right, we'll come back in a moment and talk about the legacy of the
Of
5,000
Ed Helms
fingers
and
of
Jessica
Dr. T.
Chastain.
Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1953, we are talking about the flop of the year, Dr. Seuss's The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. And we've gone all into this Seussian realm of nonsense, but we're going to maybe get back to reality a little. I don't know. Talk about the legacy of this film. As we've said, Dr. Seuss kind of disowned this movie and decided not to participate in live action films again. So that was the immediate legacy for him right there.
And you know what, Josh? It just makes me like him more.
Yeah. He and you and Dr. Seuss are in agreement on this film as it being a debaculous fiasco.
Yeah, he's published over 60 books, spawned numerous adaptations, 11 television specials, 5 feature films, a Broadway musical, 4 television series, and as we said, he was already a part of 2 Oscar winners.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Dr. Seuss doesn't need this movie for his legacy between those books and the TV specials that were beloved. I mean, like you said, we all grew up with the Grinch special, the Boris Karloff one, and the songs in that, and a mixed track record with those feature films, I think, that have been released since his death. I think you liked that recent animated Grinch with Benedict Cumberbatch more than I did. But
did you ever see Seussical the musical?
No, the stage production, which was also a flop, was it not? Did you see it?
Nah, I didn't see it, but I would see it. That sounds fun.
Yeah,
So,
I was thinking that this could be a stage musical. This is totally the kind of thing that could be reinvented and become a stage musical.
Reinvented is the key word here, Joe.
I mean, all the songs, even including the ones that they didn't use in the movie, are just there and ready for people to use.
I mean, the whole premise is, I don't know, maybe it's just not one of his best premises. Do you have a favorite Dr. Seuss book?
I mean, I haven't read I don't have a child, so I haven't read an actual Dr. Seuss book in, 40 years, or well, not quite that long, but 30 years at least. So I don't know. I don't have a favorite Dr. Seuss book probably, because I think I did like the 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins or whatever when I was a child, but I don't remember. That might not have been how many hats he had. He had a lot of hats.
5,000 fingers.
No,
Josh.
he had hats.
As Dr. T.
No, that was Dr. T.
Stick on the subject, Josh.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Dr. Seuss book?
I always liked Hop on Pop. I thought that was a good one. And I remember in college, at the last day of my television writing course, our teacher read us, "Oh, the Places You Will Go."
Yeah.
And apparently one of them for me was not to become a television writer with merit and success.
You still got a chance. You did become a podcaster talking about failed Dr. Seuss movies.
I really thought you were going to bring up my screenplay award from this summer because you love bringing that up, Josh.
You do too, because you just did.
Nah, that was just me playing defense against you.
All right.
Dave, any favorites from Dr. Seuss?
I haven't read any in forever. I will say I enjoyed the Jim Carrey movie.
Oh God, that movie is so bad.
It's bad, but I had fun with it though.
Dave, what are you doing with your life?
Have you seen that Mike Myers Cat in the Hat movie, Jason? I have not.
No, we should watch it.
We should
for
not.
1953.
For 1953 that it came out. Yeah.
Bonus episode.
It's a good plan. Do you have a favorite Dr. Seuss movie or TV special?
Well, I mean, it's got to be the classic Grinch, and I did like that newer Grinch. I don't think I saw the Lorax or the Horton Hears a Who of the new ones.
Yeah,
Did you?
I saw the Lorax, which I think was okay. I didn't see the Horton Hears a Who movie, and that was it. I did watch all the Gerald McBoing Boing shorts though in advance of this because there are 4 of them. Only the first one was actually written by Dr. Seuss, and the other ones were trying to sort of emulate his style with mixed success. But the first one is fun, and it's got a cool like minimalist animation style that was kind of revolutionary or different at the time, and it's a fun little concept. So that's something I actually watched recently that I can say was enjoyable. You could watch that with your daughter. It's 7 minutes long. You could endure it.
All right, I'll deal with that. I mean, dude, it's not like I don't want to watch more Dr. Seuss stuff.
Right.
I just don't like this one.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So Roy Rowland, who, as we said, is the director here, was a kind of a journeyman director who has a lot of credits, not a lot of super note. This might be his most notable film. I happened recently to rewatch a film that he directed called Meet Me in Las Vegas, which is a very fun musical set in Las Vegas that I've watched various times for articles related to movies about Las Vegas. And so that's the extent of my familiarity with him. That's from 1956 and it is enjoyable, especially if you're a Vegas person, you want to see some vintage scenery from 1950s Las Vegas. But other than that, he's one of these guys who's kind of a workhorse, as we were talking about with the director of The Robe, but maybe he's not an auteur in any way.
Josh, did you know that John M. Chu from Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights is supposed to direct All the Places You Will Go for 2027?
For 2027, that's a long way away.
Well, it takes a while to get to those places.
I guess it does. Yeah, that could be a thing. I see the other thing about all these Seuss things is like, none of these books have enough material for a feature film. That was why it worked better when they were TV specials or 7-minute short films. And so I'm dubious about that.
Yeah, you're right. And also, look, we know he's a talented director, but In the Heights missed on a lot of like those kind of big adaptation moments. So I feel like I don't have the highest hopes for this one.
Yeah. Is it going to be a musical?
I don't know.
Okay. Because that seems like, I thought In the Heights was fine. But
yeah, of course you did, Josh. Of course.
All right. Let's move on. Tommy Rettig, who is the child star here, who plays Bart, was a successful child actor, retired as he got into his 20s and became a computer programmer in the nascent computer industry. So that was a smart move on his part.
He was in Lassie, though.
He was, yes. That was his big thing, is that he was in 3 seasons of Lassie as the kid. Because, of course, the kid is, how many kids have there been? You watch Lassie for Lassie, not for the kid, right?
Yeah, it would be more impressive if he played Lassie, too.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But no, that did not happen.
And Josh, I gave Hans Conried a bunch of crap, but he was the voice of Dr. Hook and George Darlin and Peter Pan. And
Captain Hook. I think Dr. Hook is somebody else.
Dr. Hook?
Yeah.
Is that what I said?
Yes.
Man, maybe I have got a little loopy there. So, Snidely Whiplash and Dudley Do-Right.
Yeah, and you can hear, he was a big voice actor in a lot of stuff, and you can hear how he would be great for those kind of dastardly roles and villains and that over-the-topness. And he had kind of a sad quote, because he was also a character actor. He did a lot of TV guest appearances. He was a working kind of B-level person, but this was his big chance to have a big movie role. And he said, if it had been a success with my prominent part in the title role, it would have changed my life. But, the implication being that, in fact, none of that had happened, and he had to go back to his previous career. Not that he was not successful, but
he was doing fine.
He was, yeah. But, you can imagine that you get the juicy part of the villain in the first movie that Dr. Seuss has written. Stanley Kramer is producing it, and you think this is going to be big for me, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Josh. That makes sense. Who did hit it big, Josh? Dr. Hook with the song "The Cover of the Rolling Stone" in 1972.
Yeah, thank you for that
legacy.
The biggest and coolest legacy of this movie is that Zabladowski and Heloise, like, what an amazing story. They were married in real life, and they basically worked together for 50 years, wrote books together and made a lot of movies and TV shows. Like, they were a couple of working actors who seemed to only work together on stuff, and it worked. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
It's great. Yeah. They seemed like they had a great career on stage and radio, all of that stuff, including in Las Vegas. They both lived here in Las Vegas in their later years. They performed together at the Sands. They both showed up in the Hal Ashby movie Looking to Get Out, which is a not great Vegas movie from 1982. Peter Lindhayes guest starred on Vegas, the 70s TV series. And Mary Healy is in the Nevada Entertainment Artist Hall of Fame at UNLV. So I had no idea about that Vegas connection. That was cool to check out.
I agree, but more than that, just the fact that they were able to just kind of build a career together for so long. That's amazing. They were also substitute hosts on The Tonight Show between Jack Parr's departure and Johnny Carson's arrival in 1962.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe they were a bigger deal than we know them as now. And maybe because a lot of that was on stage and on the radio and stuff that hasn't been preserved. But yeah, it's not like you said. I mean, I was in agreement with you that they're not the highlight of this film, that they're a bit bland and you wouldn't really even guess that they were married because they don't have much chemistry in this movie.
Well, they don't really get a chance to show much together either.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there's probably some sort of energy and spark that they had performing that doesn't really come across here, unfortunately. So do we want to talk about Dr. Seuss's racism?
I don't even know what that. I really don't even. You can talk about it, but it will all be news to me.
Okay, we don't have to talk about it. But I mean, there has been a slight reassessment of some of Dr. Seuss's work. I mean, it became a big sort of lame right-wing cause. I don't know. It was a year or two ago, maybe more than that, when the company that oversees the publication of Dr. Seuss's works, his actual estate, they decided to take 6 of his books out of circulation because they include racial caricature depictions of Asian characters in certain illustrations. And there's aspects of that in some of these books where he uses stereotypes that were probably very prevalent at the time, but that don't look so good now in terms of the way that Asians are depicted with yellow face and things like that. But of course, the idea that Dr. Seuss was censored, Dr. Seuss was canceled, which was not true. And many, many, many of his books are still readily available. Even the ones that were taken out of print, there were so many copies still available. You can buy them easily. Right. But, and it was in fact his own estate that did it. But there was an element of that. And I think some people are concerned. More racist than that, though, were his political cartoons during World War II, where he was a strong advocate for the internment of the Japanese in internment camps. So that's not good.
No, not good at all.
But no racism in this movie, thankfully.
Yeah.
So that's a plus.
Except against
piano players?
Cartoon villains, maybe? No, I got nothing.
No. This is wholesome. And I think it's fun. It's worth seeing. So I don't know. Anything else on the legacy of this film you want to talk about, Jason?
Josh, did you? I don't even know these books. I'm looking up the ones that were taken out of circulation, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street. If I guess I know if I ran the zoo.
Oh, the Mulberry Street one, I think I remember. But
yeah, you're right. I know these books.
But I mean, they were definitely minor compared to. It wasn't The Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham that was taken out of circulation. It was books that are less well known. And again, I guarantee you can buy all those books on eBay like right now for $10 or whatever. It's not hard.
Oh dear.
Yeah. That's Dr. Seuss.
So, no, Josh, I think we covered it from all angles. My angle being that it was just a debauculous fiasco. Your angle for saying it was just the thing, and Dave's angle, which neither of us understand.
No, I mean, I can understand. I feel like I can understand both perspectives. I feel like this is a movie that I can see how you would be taken with its ideas, even if they're not fully formed, and just be on its wavelength. And I can see how you would think like, no, this is a mess and it doesn't work. So I'm trying to be the neutral middle party here.
I mean, it's like you said about that 1,200-page script. They say it had themes of world dominance and oppression coming out of World War II. That is what this children's movie was missing for me.
But would not it have been fascinating to see what kind of total like bonkers nonsense that he could have come up with if they just gave him full creative control?
Yeah, let's go for it. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we'll never see that. So that is the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can flibble us online. I can't do the nonsense words online and on the social media.
Sure, you can. I've already mentioned my letterbox. Go for Jason. That's also my website, which is somewhere in the caves of Dr. T's piano hideaway of evil They just don't go to the website yet. I'm still fixing it. But you can check me out on all the socials at Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy. Of course, we have Eat This Comedy. We have the Trivia Party, all the things. And don't forget us at Awesome Movie Year. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, awesomemovieyear.com. And check out our podcast, Awesome Movie Year.
Yes, listen to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
Wherever you listen to Awesome Movie Year, listen to Awesome Movie Year.
Mhm.
So much Seussian nonsense here. You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Twitter, and at Signal Bleed on Letterboxd. And you can listen to our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
And Jason, what movie do we have coming up that hopefully you won't hate?
Josh, we are going back to our friends at Cannes. As you know, they sponsor this episode every year. Every season we do on a Palme d'Or winner. In 1953, there's a classic film called The Wages of Fear.
So tune in next time for The Wages of Fear. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.